Three, two, one. Hi. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Sister. Oh, you have to do some Sister. To episode 3 of Sister. We hope that you have been following through for season 1, episode 1, episode 2. And for those of you that is your first time here, season 1, we're talking about friendships. And so I have a lovely guest here. She's lovely, guys. Very, very lovely. You understand how lovely she is as we go on. But her name is Lola. So I'll give her some time to just like introduce herself.
Okay.
Introduce herself. And then, you know, what she does as well. I think it's good to share that.
Okay.
And then we'll also talk about how we met. So that would be the first thing that we would talk about before we actually have a conversation.
Sure.
The floor.
My name is Oluwafumi Lola, but I go by Lola. And what do? I am a director of communications at my church. And yeah, I think that's everything, right? Is there anything else you want me to say?
Say more. Say something. What you love doing.
Okay. I love God. I like to be in my own space, but I also love the people that I love, right? So I like to be around people that bring me so much happiness and things of that nature. So yeah, if I am not in church, if I'm not serving at my local youth ministry, you will find me at home on my computer, either designing something or watching Yoruba films, because those are like the best type in the world. So yeah.
That's good. So let's talk about how we met. It's a really interesting story, guys. It's a really, really interesting story. And sometimes I think back and I'm like, how do you even like meet, get this close, and then, you know, everything else that has stemmed from that friendship. So I'll give her the honest of telling the story, because a huge part of the story
dot.
So I'll just give her the flow. Like, she'll tell you her side of the story, and I'll tell you my side of the story about how we met.
I'll tell you the truth of how we met.
Guys,
that's it.
Let's just listen to her side of the story, and I'll tell you the actual details. She'll just give you like a summarized version of like, oh, you know, we did this, and so I just want to give her the, you know, the flow to, you know.
Wow.
Let's see how it goes.
Guys, the truth of how we met, right? So both of us serve at a ministry outside of our church's ministry, right? And there was a program that we were having that took place in another state. So we both attended, obviously, the program because we're both part of it. Now, Gladys at the time was new to the ministry.
She's like, at the
So
time.
she signed up, yes, at the time now, because you are seasoned now. So at the time, Gladys signed up to serve in a particular area, which was just, I think, greeting people, welcoming people who were coming to the event. And I am above that ministry. Well, I serve, let me just say it like that. I serve as the hospitality lead for that ministry. So
just my madam.
So I was in charge of, you know, making sure that the needs of the, not just the guests, but the ministers there and everything was taken care of. So I needed help. Right? I didn't ask for the help, but it was apparent that I needed help because I was trying to do a whole bunch of things with just these two hands.
She was running.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Running around.
Gladys saw me and approached me and said, oh, is there anything that I can help you with? Now, I think prior to that, we initially met.
Like, who even does that, guys? Who does that?
She was very kind to do that. I would say that. So even before that moment, I actually remembered I had to provide you with some of the materials that you were setting up with.
Because I had, guys, I wanted her to see her side of the story, but I'm triggered. So I had like an official role, right? I was supposed to like sit at the entrance, welcome people, give them every material that they need, just help people, you know, relax and, you know, get ready before the session starts and everything. That was my job. That's what I signed up for. Oh yeah, please go ahead.
Should I say that? Is that what I said? That's what she
You didn't say it properly.
Okay, sorry. So thank you for that addition, that clarity that you provided. So, when I went to provide her with some of the materials that she would need, that's kind of how we sort of met.
Right.
So Now, after that is when she saw me running her tasketa and she approached me and said, "Oh, do you need help with anything?" Now, based off of one, she was just so welcoming, and two, when I had previously encountered her with providing her with the materials for what she was actually supposed to serve for, she was just a nice person, right? So on a normal day, because I am so like keen on order and things of that nature, because she was like new to the ministry, I'm like, I wouldn't normally say yes to the help. I would rather someone else who has been here before, someone who's not new, to render assistance if needed. Right. So my default will always be like, "Oh no, thank you. But if I need anything, I'll let you know."
Right.
But to be honest,
that's also because of like the nature of the job, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So when she asked me, I said, "You know what? Yes, I need help," which was even strange for me. But let me tell you something. It was one of the best decisions I made that entire weekend. It was a 5-day thing, and I promise you that was one of the best decisions I made. Because Gladys, she just caught it. You know, some people just get it when you like are moving and you're trying to get things done. Some people get it. Some people need a couple of more instructions.
I still needed them.
You did, but you're also fairly smooth to work with for the most part. And I would say it was very, very, very Christ-like of her to step into an area where she had no business, right? But at the same time was just so willing to serve. So the rest is history.
The rest is history, guys. It's really, really history. But I remember vividly, like I remember walking to her and asking her for help. And she was like, "Yeah, okay, sure." And then I'm like, "Okay, can you?" So then I asked her, like, what does she want me to do? And then she's like, "Oh, can you do ABCD?" Right? So guys, I'm like so excited that I get to do ABCD. I'm done. And there's one thing that I can't understand, right? It's like the nature of a week is unending. Like there was never like, "Oh, we are done with ABCD. We are done." Like there's always something coming up. There's always something like. And so in my mind, when I volunteered, honestly, I was like, "Oh, I'm just going to do like
ABCD. A 1 and 2,
like a one time." It's recurring. You know how we can set meetings that are recurring, not one time. And then I finished, and then I'm like, "Oh, I'm done with it." She was like, "Oh, okay, can you do this?" And I'm like, "Sure."
And then you were great.
And this part of me was in shock because it was unending, you know? And she's like, "Oh, can you do this?" Guys, the climax of it was, this was the first day after I volunteered. It kept getting worse by the day. Like the next day, you never know what you're going to do at this point. You're like, "Just take me." So day 2, day 3, and the climax of it, guys, I can never forget that scene. Like, so there was like a worship component of it, right? That we did on, I think, day 4 or 5 or something. And, you know, like, I went for the event, right? So I signed up and I did everything I was supposed to do. So I'm here to also, you know, fellowship with God, Abby. So day 4, something else comes up, like a new part of the job description. Like as the day goes, in fact, I don't even want to say as the day goes, like as time passes, like it. And then the 4th day or something, when we were doing the worship part of the event, I was just like worshiping. I think at that time the worship had gotten to like the peak. Like I was worshiping. I think I was even on my knees. Like I was on my knees. I was like, and before she left, this was like she went to get something. She was like, "Oh yeah, Gladys, make sure you do this." This was like 4 days after we working together. "Make sure you do this. I'm gonna be back." I say, "Yes, madam." She didn't want me to worship, guys.
That is not true.
So
that is
please,
not true.
you finish your side of the story. Let me see my side. So I was worshiping, like to worship you. I was just there, and I just heard her voice. You know how you can hear somebody's voice remind you of something, like, "Gladys, oh yeah, I just got up." She came and she was like, "We worship it. We don't have to worship you. We can worship in our closet or something." No, Lola.
Yeah, you have to clarify.
Lola.
Excuse me, at that point, before we got to that point, I was letting her know and informing her of the different areas of opportunity that we were needing.
Hey!
Right? So what that also meant was, hospitality didn't just have to do with feeding people. It also had to do with ushering. We had to be protocol, and we had to be food, like food service, right? So that encompassed everything. Now, like I said, she was God sent because we were very short-staffed at that time.
Vibes.
So before we got to that point, I had already explained to her the nature of those things. So please, she's saying it as if, no. There was process and order to those things.
A lot of it, though, was like
spontaneous. Yes, but it was still spontaneous within the confines of what I gave her. So I still gave her those things. It's not like I just woke up. But I also made sure to let her know when it comes to ushering and protocoling.
You see how I just allowed her to say a story? She was taking over my story. Sorry. This is supposed to be my side of
That's
the
true. Sorry.
Oh yeah, protocol and what?
When it comes to protocol and ushering, I make sure to let her know that this is a sacrifice, right? So when people are being ministered to, you have to be alert, you have to be awake, and you have to be sharp. So there was a moment where the man of God at the time had stated, okay, fire is about to break out. What does that mean? Everybody in your stations, grab your prayer cloths to cover people, be on the lookout because that means people may fall out, just different cues. Right? So that is our opportunity to stand firm and stand at attention. Tissue on one hand, prayer cloth on the other hand. I looked to my left. Guys, Gladys was lifting up holy hands. And I said, excuse me.
No, that scene was a
the
scene
minister
to
said,
behold.
fire is about to break and you're lifting holy hands.
That was
to
a
catch fire.
scene to behold because I just tend to look at her, I'm like, this stemmed from just one question. One question. Like, how can I help you?
But like I said, it was one of the best decisions I made, and I do not regret it at all, one bit. When it comes to doing things for the Lord, I try my best to be as diligent as possible. So
Agreed.
The laughing and joking when we're in office.
Welcome again to our lovely show. Today we're going to be talking about same-sex friendships and opposite-sex friendships. Okay. So essentially, how do we how do we manage male friendships versus female friendships? And I think it's super important for us to be having these kind of conversations because like we know males and females are wired differently. And it's important that we have that level of understanding in engaging with males and engaging with females. So, but the primary part of the conversation would be, how to navigate male friendships properly. And so that's like my primary reason for inviting you to be here. So let's just start off with you talking about, and you don't have to talk about anything romantic if you feel like you want to share it, you can share it. But I want us to talk about like your journey of friendships, your journey of having male friendships. So how that has happened. And you can start that off with talking about your relationship with your dad, because I know that for a lot of females, most of our male friendships originate from the way that we relate with our fathers or male figures in our lives at the time. So our uncles. So essentially starting from our families, and that's what kind of like sets the tone for our male friendships. So can you just start off with talking about your relationship with your dad and how that kind of like evolved in how you started viewing men or males, and then how that also like informed how you were receptive to male friendships, and then also how you kind of like how it helped you be receptive to male friendships, and how it also helped you select male friendships, because you start off with just having friends, and then you enter into the point of just selecting male friends that you want them to be in your life.
That's a good question. So I would start by saying that my understanding of friendships did not stem from me, right? Before I came to know Christ, I had a really good example in my parents. A lot of what I've learned in regards to friendship, sisterhood, brotherhood stemmed from my parents. They were great examples by showing me what healthy friendships look like and what unhealthy friendships look like, and not even just that, but how to navigate those kind of situations. Like if you're in an unfavorable situation with friends, how to deal with that and things of that nature. So I learned a lot from them. So I'll start by saying them, giving them their props.
To them, please.
Yeah, they're great. So yes, so I would start by saying that. Next, I would say just a little bit context to that is my parents, both of them, once you get to know them, they're very, very jovial, very fun, very friendly. Yes, they have their nuances in terms of like, you know, my dad is a little bit more on the quiet and reserved side. My mom is, you know, the one that's a little like life of the party. But even in their individual, even with their differences, let me say it like that, they're still very, very extremely friendly people, right? And seeing them, how they treat their friends and how they speak with them, how they take their own matters like as if it's their own, has taught me that friendship goes beyond a phone call. It goes beyond checking in. It's more so like taking this person as your own blood, right? So even when I started understanding the dynamic of friendships and engaging in them, I automatically went in with the mindset of, if I'm calling you a friend, it really doesn't stop there. I'm really calling you either my sister or brother, depending on who you are.
That's so good.
So I would say that would be like the genesis of all of those things.
Right.
Now, I started by, I would say my first friends that I can like remember are my church family. And that's because I was born and raised in a particular church that I used to go to. So my first understanding and idea of friends, at least that I can remember, like I said, that can date back, started with my church family. So like I said, because I saw them as family, I didn't really see them as friends. Now I would say when we had our differences growing up, it took me a while to understand that they weren't my family, if that makes sense. Like, so we would fight, we would argue and things like that, and we'll make up like nothing ever happened. But then as we got older and we started creating our own definitions of what friends are and our own requirements individually, myself and them, it was clear that some of us weren't on the same path or of the same understanding of what friendship looked like. And that was okay. But I would say in the beginning, it was a little hard to understand because in my mind, I'm like, oh, we're all friends. Until you get older and you realize your differences. And then it's like, oh, okay, maybe we're not. Or maybe we all don't have the same understanding. So I would say that was the beginning of me embarking on a friendship journey. Now bringing it to the outside world when I was in school, like I said, I take everyone as my friends, boys, girls, and not everyone got really, really close to me, but I can be friendly with anyone, right? And like I said, just similar to the church experience, growing up, understanding, being able to define myself, okay, these are things that I need in a friendship. These are things that I don't want. These are things that I don't mind. As I navigated through that and I saw how other people did that as well, you know, some people you naturally grow apart from, and which is fine, just phases of life. So I would say the ones that stuck, and the ones that came to pass. So I hope that answered your question.
It did.
Okay.
It did. I just want us to get into the part of your male friendship journey. So just talk through, maybe record some of your first male friendships and how they kind of started, and how they kind of like also evolved. So, and then we'll get into some of the juicy parts, which is, you know, in terms of like, did you experience like a male friendship evolve from a very platonic friendship to a romantic one, and you know how that journey was, you know, if you know, I'm certain.
If I can date it back, like I said, a lot of my childhood took place in the church. So it's very hard for me to talk about my childhood without talking about the kind of experiences that I had there. So my first understanding of male friendships came from the church. Like I said, at the time, my dad and a former friend of hers, well, they're still friends, but at the time they were former college mates, right? My dad had migrated here from Nigeria. We were all born here and things like that. And his friend was about to come and migrate here and later on bring his family. So when they were doing that, they lived with us for a short period of time, him and his family. So those were my first understanding of male friends, because he had twin sons and they are my older brothers till today. But that was my first understanding of, number one, older brothers, because I didn't have one. I didn't have any, and male friends as well. So that was my first understanding of male friendships. And again, because of the relation that my dad has with their father, we were immediately taught that we were cousins, you know, things of that nature. So there was no demarcation of friends or family. We were family, right? As I get a little bit older, I think back to, again, some more church friendships that I've had. And we were just raised in a familial type of way. So you just automatically see them as your brother. So that means there's nothing that's off limits. There's nothing we can't talk about. There's nothing we can't joke about. Sometimes we can joke to the point where you'll think something is there, but because we grew up in such a healthy atmosphere that understood the difference of platonic and romantic, and there were no blurred lines, right? So because of that, there was an understanding of we are family. So obviously I wouldn't change my clothing in front of you the way I would with maybe their younger sister, but at the same time, there's nothing that's mine that's not yours. There's nothing that's yours that's not mine, right? So, you know, getting into, again, the school system and understanding how things are done outside of the church.
Outside of your home.
Some things were recognized as, oh, are you guys together? And it's like, I never saw it like that.
No, we're not.
Because that just wasn't a thing. It was not something that was even considered. And it also wasn't something that at least we were exposed to. So those types of questions, those types of thought processes of, oh, is something going on, were so foreign to me. I don't know about them because I've actually never asked them, because again, we don't talk about certain things because it's like it's a given for all of us, right? And I'm gonna stick with those twin brothers as my point of contact, simply because I think because we're still friends till today, I still see them as my brothers. I think they are probably like the perfect example to use. So yeah, so those things they were foreign to me, at least to me. Hearing things like, you know, you guys are really close. Does that mean what? Like my mind just never went there, right? But once my mind started going there and being exposed to certain things, I would say immediately then my mind was now open to the possibility, oh, is it possible that maybe we are liking each other and we don't know that we're not liking each other, we don't know that. So I would say, and just stepping away from the two twins brothers now, I'm just now speaking generally. Once my mind was open to that possibility, it became a possibility. I started seeing things differently. I started relating with people differently, or more carefully in that aspect, knowing that, oh, there's a possibility that it could appear more than what we wanted to appear. So now let me start being careful. And then, you know, as you progress as a woman and as a man, and as your body matures, you can't play certain ways anymore. You can't touch certain areas that you normally would touch just by playing. Now you're a little bit more conscious, like, oh, I don't know if, you know, things of that nature. So I would say there was definitely the outer effect of what that entailed. But what I would say that drew us always back was the understanding that we both had. The understanding that, and both as in me and the other party, whoever that male party was, just understanding like, we know what this is. We also understand how it could appear. So as we move accordingly, it should not change how I relate with you. It just means that we just need to be a little bit more mindful that we are not the only ones anymore involved in this, right? So yeah, did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting, and I like the fact that you brought the point about, you know, once you're exposed to people saying it, once you're exposed to, I think primarily of the exposure is when people bring it up, and a lot of it is much more external, where then you start thinking about the possibility. And so I'm just thinking, do you think, let's assume that, you know, you were not exposed to all of this,
right,
all of these like external factors that like influenced how, for example, like using, you know, that particular example, for example, do you think it would have changed anything? Do you think that the fact that you were exposed to all of this had like an impact on, you know, your relationship with them at the time?
At that time, if I was not exposed to it, I would say no, because I would still be going through life with my point of view, right? But I do think it's important to not live your life according to other people's expectations, but be mindful of how things come across, right? Even Jesus was very much so, who do you say I am, right? These are what they say I am, but who do you think I am? Right. You know what I mean? So I think it's very important to note the importance of how things are portrayed. Not, again, living to the standards of others, but being mindful of how things come across. Because now I'm no longer, now I can say this, right? At that time I didn't know. Right. But now I can say, I'm now not representing Lola, I'm representing Christ. So if I'm not a good representation of Christ, then I need to recheck my boxes, making sure am I dotting all my I's and crossing all my T's, right? But of course, at that time, that didn't matter to me. Right. I don't like you, and I know I don't like you. You know you don't like me, and so it's like, who cares what other people think? You can't quite help that, right? And to be honest, you can't. Even if you say today, I'm gonna live A, B, C, D, somebody will still find something to say, right? True. So like I said, while not living against other standards apart from Christ, he's the only one whose standards we are to measure our lives and our values and everything up to, right? But again, just being mindful of how that may come across.
So thank you for sharing that. So let's talk about, like, I know you've kind of like not been getting into the details that I want you to get into, but I wanted to talk about like your male friendships. Like, talk about like your current male friendships. Talk about how you manage them. Talk about how you make sure you get the best out of them, because you know there's a lot of research about the fact that when we engage with like the male counterparts, it has like a level of improvement to, you know, the feminine side Absolutely. Of you. And so let's just talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So before I start, I think it's important to note that I don't have a lot of friends, at least people that I consider friends in terms of my close-knit circle. I have a lot of brothers and sisters in Christ, and I have a lot of people around me that I love.
No, you giving a disclaimer.
No, I think it's important to note, right? I have a lot of people that I love, don't get me wrong, right? But my close-knit circle is not a large circle, right? So the reason why I say I think that's important to note is when I say I don't have a lot of male friends, some people may think, how do you not have a lot of male friends? So that's why I said I think it's important to note that, right? Now, to your question about how to navigate that, how to make sure, and I'll just add a little bit to it, pretty much like how to make sure those friends are friends. And if things are platonic, they're staying platonic, you know, making sure that the lines are not blurred.
How do you make the best out of them?
How do you make the best out of them?
Yeah.
I think number one, establishing that this is what this is. I think that's the best way to navigate anything in life. It's the most clarifying question, right?
Okay.
Understanding everyone's role in your life and putting them where that they belong, if that makes sense.
From the onset.
And training yourself to understand, like you said, as we grow and we progress, especially as you get older, there's certain parts of the biological makeup of us that want certain things at certain points of our life, right? You reach a certain age.
That's so good.
Yeah, right? You reach a certain age, you reach a certain time in your life. And because of how the Lord has made us and we're wired, right? Women at a certain time are ready to have babies. So as you're ready to have babies, there are certain things you need to do to have babies, right? And in order to do those certain things to have babies, certain things need to be triggered in your body. So naturally, as your body craves a child, it also craves things that want a child, or that bring about a child, if that makes sense. So it's so it's important to know that. It's important to know yourself. It's also important to know the creation that God created. Be aware of yourself, right? Because then you're able to easily discern and decipher, okay, me wanting this is not bad, right? It's not a bad thing. However, I'm aware of it. So now when I'm now interacting with the opposite sex, I have that in mind, knowing that. And because I know that every man that comes my way is not my man. And I'm also aware that it's possible for my mind to trick me into thinking, because I want a certain thing at this point in time in my life, it's possible for my eyes to see every man that walks by as a potential.
So thinking about every friendship as a romantic friendship, every male friendship.
Absolutely. That's good. Yes. So it's important to know yourself, know the body that God has created, and understand that. That way, you're already checking off one box of becoming aware of yourself, right? Now, those little things can now inform a lot of other things. It can now help you navigate certain relationships, friendships, and putting them where they belong, and not allowing your mind and your imaginative, creative mind that the Lord has given us to create realities that are not realities, right? Okay, so now once all of those things are established, I think it's easy to, or it should be easy, because I don't want to speak for everyone, but it should be easier to place people where they belong. Once you're able to do that and be mature enough to keep them there, right? And of course, this is just a sidebar, this is also assuming that both parties are complying, right? So let's say I establish that you are just my friend, but you are go ahead.
And we've had a conversation about it
Yeah.
too, right? Because this can just be one-sided.
Yeah. So assuming all things are equal,
Very good.
right? It should be easy, right? And you're dealing with adults, mature adults who know how to separate when things are needed to be separated, right? Once you establish that, everything flows from there. Conversations, line of questioning, boundaries, everything flows from clear understanding of placement and positioning of people's in your lives. I also think what also flows from there is a freedom and liberty to speak and talk about anything, right? Like you said like something about research shows that we benefit from each other, right? And in doing so, for example, I'm a woman and I want a man at some point in my life. Why wouldn't I seek the advice of a man in my life regarding this area? Who better, apart from God, right? God is in his own category. Let me just make that very clear.
No rival, no equal, please.
But of the gifts that he's given us here on this earth, what better person or who better than to pull from someone who is intimately knowing you, and not romantically, but intimately knowing the inner parts of you, right? And is able to advise you based off of his own gender. He can let you know, okay, this is how we think. This is how we reason. These are things that are important to us. These are things that we don't care about. What better person than a male friend who knows the ins and outs of you, right? Than to consult in regards to those matters. So I think that's very, very, very true in what you had said about we can learn from each other. We can gauge. Men view things in such a different light.
It's so interesting.
It's some things I'm like, why do you guys think
how are
like
so
that?
Different.
But then there's some other things I'm like, wow.
It's so good.
I'm like, wow. You know, and we have a tendency, we as a women, we have a tendency to overthink, overanalyze. And there's some things that they'll just say, oh, I didn't think of it. And it's just like, I never thought about it like that. Or, you know, you're right. Maybe my mind was going. So we can always benefit from each other. And sometimes the enemy wants to put things like confusion in the form of, because you're at a certain age and you're not where you want to be, so you now view everyone as eligible bachelors, and you now taint what the Lord meant to be something that was so pure and so rich and has so much depth, right? So not being aware of yourselves can hinder that.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. Big ups. But I at some point in my life, right, I had like a hard time, relating with my dad at a certain season of my life. Like it was mostly around when I was a teenager, moving away from home, when I went to high school and all of those things. And I remember, like, fast forward to a couple of years in my 20s, right, most of the male friendships that I had at the time and the way that I was relating with them or engaging with them played a huge role in my relationship with my dad. They gave me so much knowledge, so much understanding about the male gender, and I feel like that's set the tone for my relationship with my dad now. So I think it's so profound how there's so much to learn about them through like our male friendships, like so much. And the example about how they help some of my male friends help me think objectively sometimes, or sometimes when I'm getting too caught up in my emotions, I'm getting too carried away, I'll just call one of my male friends and say, hey, what do you think about this? And he's like, oh, I think you should do A, B, C, D. And the value in that in my development as an individual and in my development as a person,
priceless.
Priceless. No money can buy.
Priceless.
So I think we being able to identify that as women, we being able to nurture that. It takes a lot of diligence to be able to nurture a male friendship in a way that is healthy and in a way that is beneficial to your life. It takes a lot of like consistency too, and always coming back to the basics. Coming back to, like you said, putting things where they are supposed to be. I have like a friend. And then we have mutual friends. Okay. So he's friends with myself and two other female friends that I have. Okay. And so he helps us, like, if we have things that we are stressed about, things going on in our love lives, we just run it by him, talk to him about it, and all of those things. He's amazing, by the way. So I remember there was a time where he started seeing somebody, and then we were all like, hey, what's going on here? What's going on here? Like, the amount of attention that he used to give us, the amount of like investment that he used, that thing just vanished. And we had to have a conversation about what that meant for us, and how we still need to be able to get the most out of this friendship that God has, even in this season.
Life, yeah.
And so what does that look like? And I remember there was a time where we were all on the FaceTime call, and we would typically call him too, and then he would just jump on the call, and there was this time around, we call him and he's like, oh, sorry guys, I'm on the phone, I can't join. And we're like, ah, God, I beg. And then we're like, if we were in his shoes, or let's assume that we were even the lady that he was seeing, we probably won't be happy if, what are we going to hear? Like, oh, hey babe, I need to get off a call and talk to my female friends. But like, the ability to get out of ourselves.
Get out of yourselves. That's
which
the
is so
thing.
important.
Selflessness.
Yeah.
And even if you get to a point of, okay, now that he's in this season of his life, how do we adapt as his friends?
Right.
Number one, become friends with his woman.
Yeah.
And not for the sake of, okay, let me become friends with her so that she can get to know us and are okay with now as we continue on calling him incessantly, right? It gets to a point where you have to understand that life is not all about taking.
Yeah.
If anything, the life that we're called to is a life of giving.
It's the opposite.
Right? So let me get to know her, not because of the access that I still want to have to him, but because I love him.
Yeah.
He's my friend, and
Yeah.
anything concerning him concerns me.
Yeah.
So let me get to know her in that aspect. And if in the event that you guys don't get close, that's okay.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Seasons come and seasons
Understanding
go.
that is also really key. Very interesting conversation. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing. So let's talk about what kind of advice or tips would you give to young women, growing women, navigating, how to maintain, how to manage, and how to nurture male friendships in a way that is healthy, is beneficial, and is not, you can get the best out of it. So just like a few tips for you.
Yeah, of course. I think one of the most keen things, if not the most important thing in navigating anything outside of you, is understanding who you are first. You can't quite navigate, at least effectively, things that are external, right? Without first understanding how it affects the internal. And in order for you to understand how it affects the internal, you have to get to know the internal, get to know yourself, your likes, your dislikes, your do's, your don'ts, your must-haves and nice-to-haves. Getting a sense of your identity. And because I'm a Christian, obviously, that does not exist outside of the identity that Christ has given to us. So I think it's very, very, very important.
So
first,
clear.
know who you are. Understand who you are first. That way, even if you do have needs, if you have voids that need to be filled, you're not seeking them externally. Because if you don't have a good sense of that first, and I'm not saying you need to be whole and perfect and all those things, allow Christ to help you identify if there are any holes and voids. Let him fill it so that you're not seeking that outside, so that it doesn't mess up your perspective on life. That way, you're not expecting things from people that you shouldn't be expecting from them. You're being realistic and you're helping yourself manage even the expectations that you have of people, and likewise and what they have of you, right? So that will always be my first tip. Know yourself, get to know who you are, understand what makes you you and what adds value to you. Then, after doing that, it's easy to now navigate anything that exists outside of you.
Right.
It's easy to manage that. Now, in this particular instance where we're talking about male friendships, especially when it comes to male friendships, understanding your sense of identity is so important because you're not just dealing with another person, you're dealing with someone of the opposite sex. And if you're not clear on what it is that you desire in life, you can desire from the wrong person or the wrong things. So it's very important to get that understanding. Now, navigating the male friendships, as you, like I said, after you've created those clear boundaries and understanding and maturing, give yourself grace, number one, right? You will like people, especially because
You catch unnecessary feelings.
you But it's true, you do.
Which is fine.
And it's fine, because as you're growing, certain things are happening that were not happening before.
Yeah.
Certain things you're seeing, you weren't seeing before.
Yeah, I mean,
and
if
you're becoming...
if your emotions are not functioning
Right.
the way it's supposed to be functioning, it's worrisome, right?
And there are a lot of things that create hormonal imbalances in us that make us crave things we don't normally crave. AKA, during your period, things like that. So many things causes imbalances in us, scientifically and psychologically as well. So becoming aware, and that's part of getting to know yourself, getting to know the times of your life where you're a little bit more clingy, you're a little bit more seeking in other people, other things. Being aware of those things can help you manage it, right? That's not to say that you always get it right. That's not to say that you won't like people, especially as we're growing in Christ and all those other things. There are things that will be really attractive to you, but doesn't necessarily mean that they are for you, or at least in that way, right? So just being clear on how external factors affect you can help you put them in their rightful place. And like I said, give yourself grace. You will like people and things like that, but the same way as you go on in life and you use the scriptures to help bring you back when you're deviating, let those same standards work for every area of your life, especially your love life. I think
we typically don't do that.
We don't.
Yeah,
we don't.
right,
So just using those like markers, like, okay, I think I'm veering off. Let me reel it back in. And it takes a deep level of self-awareness. I keep saying this. Dealing with anything outside of you requires an immense amount of maturity. When elders used to say, or people that have gone before us used to always say, and some of them still say it till now, don't engage in certain things until you reach a certain age. They know what they were saying. Because it takes a level of selflessness and maturity to maintain. I'm not even talking about romantic, even platonic relationships. It takes an immense amount of selflessness and maturity to and self-awareness,
so those three.
to navigate anything that requires nurturing, anything that requires growth, that requires intentionality. You cannot find them outside of those three things, right?
That's so good.
So it's so important to invest in yourself in those areas so that you're not bleeding on people, so that you're not allowing other people to bleed on you, and so that you can maintain as much of a healthy standpoint and perspective of life as possible.
That's so good. I also think like a lot of this also, like one way that you can also do this is through like your community.
Absolutely.
Like your friendships.
Absolutely.
They would mirror a certain part of you that you didn't know existed.
Absolutely.
And so being
and
able,
accountability.
yeah,
Being able to allow people to call you out.
yeah,
You'll be in your feelings, but you'll be fine.
yeah.
It's a
But you
part
can
of
only
maturity.
get that in having a great community.
Absolutely.
So it's
Absolutely.
important that we don't shy away from that as well. We make ourselves, we put ourselves in positions that we can have, the benefits of like what this community gives to us in navigating all of these things. Thank you so much. That's so good. Oh yeah, 411.
I do have one question for you though.
Wait, you have to
Give it gap.
give it gap. Okay, go ahead.
I do have a question for you, if you don't mind. Being
is the way you
someone-
said. Is the way you said if you don't mind. I'm worried.
Don't worry. Don't worry. I save all those deep ones for off camera.
Off camera. Yeah.
So, being that you're such a jovial person, you're someone that can adapt to different atmospheres and breathe the life of the party. Has there ever been a time that has worked against you when dealing with male friendships? And do you have any advice for maybe people who are very friendly as you are and very open, and how sometimes that can be misunderstood for something else or misconstrued for something else? So if there's like a young woman that's watching that's like, oh, but I'm really friendly, how do I still be myself yet still maintain these relationships without the other party thinking that there's anything there?
That's such a good question. I think like you said, a strong part of it is understanding yourself, knowing that you are super friendly, knowing that you can be very much extroverted and what that would look like for people that are not used to, this kind of person. It's hard to kind of like manage the extent to which the other person would, think about the relationship. But I think one way that you can do that is being able to Also, I guess being very, very clear about like your intentions. I've had like a lot of male friends that maybe didn't like me in the beginning, but just because I was the way that I was, maybe they would start catching feelings. And so being able to manage myself in a way that I'm able to regulate the relationship, and that meant regulating my emotions at a certain point, regulating my myself as an individual, because once you're not able to do that properly, you put yourself in a position, or you put the relationship in a position where the other person tends to maybe think otherwise. And so a lot of it has to do with you having like an understanding of yourself, and then you being able to regulate the relationship or manage the relationship in such a way that these other people don't think that there's something else that has to do that you might want out of the relationship. I think for the most part of it, you can't control it. I think you have the opportunity to learn from some of the friendships that you have, and you have the ability to pick up insights from previous ones and say, I was not able to manage my relationship properly, calling people after a certain time, that's an example of a boundary that you can put in place. Having some conversations, there's some conversations that I wouldn't have with all my male friends when it has to do with my love life, because that's a way of just protecting myself and protecting the friendship from, once people start feeling like they have responsibility for you, they almost tend to take a stance of, let me do something. And that can also like taint or affect the way that relationship is supposed to be. So yeah, I mean, I've had to do a lot of like assessing myself and assessing how I can be there. And I've had to put on different caps for my different male friendships, because for some of them, I have to be very playful.
Cutthroat.
Yeah.
And others need structure. Yes, it's true.
So yeah, and what that would look like at every season. And so for some of them, excuse me, like I mentioned, for one of my male friends, I realized that he was transitioning to a point of like, he has been single for a while, now he's had to see somebody. And so what can I bring to him at that point in time? We've had conversations about how women think or how women would behave, like how we have some expectations of, if I'm seeing him, for example, what I would want him to do. And, I've been able to position myself as beneficial to my male friends in the seasons that they're in, with like a strong knowledge of yourself, getting out of yourself, and also knowing what they require at that point in time, because you also require them to complement you at a certain point in your life or a certain season in your life. So being able to acknowledge that, and being able to do that for yourself and for them, I think is super beneficial.
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you.
Host has become a guest speaker.
Guest. That's what you get for interviewing Lola. But thank you so much, guys. It's been wonderful having you.
It's been great.
This has been really
good.
This
was really like,
I mean, I have a couple of other questions, but
maybe you invite me for part 2.
Maybe I should.